looking beyond travel blogging. Was anybody here in the previous session? Go on, raise your hand. Excellent. And if you remember at the start, I talked about how I think travel bloggers need to diversify and look for different areas of business opportunity. Because travel blogging, the niches, they're starting to look outside their own niches. So, for example, you've got family bloggers doing more with travel firms. And the reason why I asked Sally, the reason why she's definitely worth waiting to talk to, is that she's worked with some really big names in travel. And so it's very important, I think, to learn about these different opportunities. But I think for brands, it's very easy to look at bloggers as media and to think, right, so I need to do something with social media, I need to get blog posts, I need to do blah, blah, blah. And to just approach travel bloggers. But I think in actual fact, it can be really useful, especially to your bottom line and final return on investment, to really target bloggers who maybe don't write about travel, but write about a niche and to an audience that is very, very targeted and very, very relevant. Because one of the learning points from earlier was about relevancy, wasn't it? You know, and when bloggers are approaching brands. So I asked an expert panel of four very intelligent people, and also Mark from Yorkshire, to come along to talk to you today. So come and talk to you today briefly about their experiences, but also just to, just to hopefully answer some questions from the floor as well. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over the mic to Gemma from Retro Chick, who's going to go through a couple of examples that she's undertaken.
Hi, I'm Gemma from Retro Chick. I'm a fashion and lifestyle blog with a very specific twist on vintage and kind of quirky fashion that I write about. I don't call it a fashion blog myself. I kind of tend to think of it more as personal style, and I tend to do outfit posts and write about my kind of personal experiences rather than directly what was on the catwalks and that kind of thing. So I don't cover trends, so I have to look at my slides for my notes. I've been one of the Cision Media has put me in the top 10 UK fashion blogs since 2011. They may be crazy, I'm not sure. Next. No, that's yours.
There we go.
Yeah, so because I focus on a particular niche audience talking about vintage and the kind of quirky style, I have worked with some travel brands within that, mostly UK brands that I've worked with. This is just a couple that I've worked with Marsden Cottages, which do cottages in Devon and Cornwall area. I did a straight sponsored post with them, which was talking about particular cottages they had in the area that I thought might appeal to readers of my blog, and focusing on things to do around the area. So I wrote about vintage cafes that are in the area around that blog, so around those cottages. And the other one was the Orient Express, which has got a really obvious tie-in to kind of a vintage audience. So there was actually a group of us went on a trip on the Orient Express, which was really good. And I produced a series of posts around that. But I was actually going to talk in a little bit more detail about some work I actually did with Premier Inn, not in a huge amount of detail, because it was a really interesting one to do, because Premier Inn isn't a brand that I would normally talk about on my blog. It's not anything to do with vintage fashion or anything like that. But the pitch and the approach to me was really good. They came to me with a really clear idea of how we could work together and fit it into my blog. So they'd obviously actually read my blog first, rather than turn up going, hey, you read about fashion, we thought you might like to go shopping for some really trendy shoes. They came to me, they were opening a new city centre venue in Leamington Spa, and they came to me with a very clear vision that they would give me a budget and a night in the hotel, and I could go out and find the vintage sights and sounds of Leamington Spa, go shopping, produce some outfits, and actually write a blog post about my experience in Leamington Spa, mentioning Premier Inn, rather than a pure, straight hotel review, which wouldn't really have fitted with the style of my blog. So because it was a really good pitch and sounded fun, I thought I'd do that. Oh, sorry, I should have asked you to go on to another slide, maybe. Or did you do that? Oh, there we go. So the advantages of that for them was that they managed to reach a niche audience and possibly sell their location and venue to an audience that were interested in vintage fashions. They have a very specific reach there. And they also, they show up very highly, or I show up very highly, should I say, in searches for vintage Leamington Spa. So using niche keywords that I was already showing up quite highly for, they can get in on that. So when people search for vintage Leamington Spa, which they do, I show up kind of top on Google, and obviously the mention of Premier Inn as a place to stay is there as a mention for that. So that was all. I just wanted to go into that one in a little bit more detail, particularly because it was outside of my niche, but they managed to fit it into that niche, and a big brand managed to get into that niche market as well as just a straight travel market. That's it.
Thanks very much, Gemma. I don't know if you noticed, but Sally arrived. Hi, Sally.
Hi.
We were waiting for you with bated breath. Well, we promised not to clap when you arrived, so we didn't want to embarrass you.
I'm unembarrassable. I'm from the north.
Okay. We'll give it a try then. I think what's important as well as the bloggers talking to you today is to really go over a really good example of how a destination have worked with non-travel bloggers. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn over the mic to Verity from Tourism Malaysia, just to talk about the One Malaysia Mega Sale Carnival.
Hi everyone, I'm Verity. I work at the Brighter Group, and we do the PR for Tourism Malaysia in the UK. We do trips throughout the year to Malaysia, and in June we wanted to promote the One Malaysia Mega Sale Carnival. So this is a nationwide event that takes place throughout Malaysia. It's where the malls there, they offer discounts and put on in-store events and activities. It's focused on domestic and international tourists. A lot of people don't know that Kuala Lumpur is actually such a huge destination now for shopping. It's not necessarily the first place people think of. It was voted by CNN as the fourth best shopping city in the world after New York, London and Tokyo. And we really wanted to expose this to a new market in the UK who can be quite sort of Western-centric in shopping in particular. You know, you think of Paris and Milan and things like that. Next slide, please. So we decided to focus on travel bloggers to put a press trip together. We knew we could create quite a diverse itinerary, so we wanted to work with bloggers who obviously focus on fashion and shopping, but do discuss general lifestyle as well, so that when we were out there, they could write about the food and the sights that they saw as well. And we thought they were they had the right audience for this event. Rather than sort of full-on travel bloggers, we decided that the reach of the fashion bloggers would be right for this trip. Next slide, please. So these are some photos from our trip. So the itinerary we put together, we visited the malls that took part in the One Malaysia Mega Sale Carnival. We went to the grand launch. We had the chance to go to Kuala Lumpur Fashion Week while we were there as well. And we went to the fashion houses of some designers to talk about the way they work and their sort of local product as well. We also had the chance to do quite a lot of sightseeing, and we did a 3-day trip to the island of Langkawi as well for some downtime after all the shopping. Next slide, please. We found that sort of working with fashion bloggers brought a new perspective and a sort of a new enthusiasm. They don't necessarily get the chance to visit amazing destinations all the time, as some travel bloggers I know do get. They have an amazing life. They get to go all over the shop. These fashion bloggers, they're not used to that. They had such an enthusiasm, such a passion when they were writing, and they got up every day so excited and did bring in a whole new perspective. And we also got some fantastic results. So within a week of the trip ending, we had 19 blog posts, over 7 publications. Because we had 5 bloggers, some of them wrote for a few different publications, which was great. We got 340 tweets posted, 179 Instagrams, and 25 Facebook updates. So after 1 month, that came to a total reach of 340,000 hits. Next page, please. Thank you. So basically what we found was that sort of reaching out and going into a new field of blogging, it really did sort of extend our reach into the right audience for this particular event, unlocked new markets, and created really compelling content.
Thank you very much. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over the mic to our special guest, who is, I suppose, a big fan of dramatic entrances.
Go big or go home.
Exactly. was expecting the James Bond boat up the Thames there, to be honest.
Tomorrow, maybe.
So, Sally, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Oliver. Apologies for being late. My name is Sally Whittle, and I'm a blogger. I'm a mummy blogger at Who's the Mummy. But as my day job, I run a series of blogging communities, the biggest of which is called TOTS 100, and it's a community of just over 8,000 mum and dad bloggers based in the UK. And we're working extensively, really over the last 3 years, with travel brands who recognise, I think, as we've just said, that mummy bloggers and photography bloggers and food bloggers, they're reaching new markets where, you know, it's tempting to think that a mummy blogger just talks about babies and parenting, but actually, as anybody who's had an offspring will know, they don't magically leave home when they turn 12 months. You've kind of got to keep them long term. So it's all the stuff you do with them when they're 4 and they're 5 and they're 9, and you're writing about all the things that you buy as a family. So that's going to be cars, it's technology, it's home products, it's interiors, and it's holidays. And holidays are a huge part of the experience for parent bloggers. We've done a little bit of research, and we've found that 31% of UK women read a parenting blog at least once a month in the UK. Collectively, although an individual blog may not have the reach of a consumer magazine or a newspaper, collectively our members are serving 10 million page impressions every month. That's a huge collective audience. And the great thing about mummy bloggers in particular, and daddy bloggers, sorry Mark, is that they're tremendously well connected. So yes, they have their blogs, but they're also on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're on Google+, they've got Facebook pages as well as profiles, they're on new networks that I haven't even remembered the names of yet. They're everywhere, and they're incredibly chatty, and they love to talk about what they're doing. So one of the things that we do with travel brands is, I think it's tempting to think that a travel blogger type experience when you're working with parent bloggers has to involve, well, we can't afford to just give away that many free holidays to families, and particularly because parent bloggers will often want to take their families with them on a trip. So it can be costly. So I think what's important to realise is there are different ways to work with communities, and yes, you can do review trips, and certainly we've done that. What we try and do, and again, it's what Neve said about focusing on keywords and niche markets. So we've done very successfully, for example, we worked with an organisation called Vibe Israel, which is a non-profit group which seeks to improve understanding of what's going on in Israel beyond a military situation. And we worked with them to identify 5 food bloggers who went out and did a food tour of the region. And they were parenting bloggers, but giving them something more interesting to talk about gave them much more reach. And certainly I think we had a reach over about 6 weeks of that campaign of around about 1.2 million unique readers saw that messaging and saw that content. We've done similar things with Grana Padano. We did a cheese tour of Italy, which is one of my professional highlights of all time. But they went out and they learned about cheese, and they saw where the cheese was made. And I think it's just about being a little bit more creative and thinking, okay, well, actually, if somebody isn't per se a travel blogger, let's give them an experience. If you're doing something with children, it might be about putting on activities. So one of the relationships that I have is with First Choice, and they send a group of bloggers, I'm one of them, we go on 6 trips over the year. I take my daughter with me, and they lay on all kinds of ridiculous activities where she paints herself with chocolate and she goes diving, and all those kind of family experiences which are often missing from the more mainstream travel blogs, because they tend to focus on the slightly more independent traveller. Within the family market, you're getting tremendously influential content. And also think beyond blog posts. So one of the partnerships we have, which is one of our most successful partnerships, is with Centre Parks. So we work with Centre Parks to recruit 12 blogger ambassador families each year. And the bloggers make a video or write a blog post or make a Pinterest board to demonstrate their adventurous spirit as a family. And from that, we will select 12 bloggers, and the bloggers then they go on a Centre Parks trip, so they write a review, but they also take part in monthly challenges. So it's themed activities that they're doing at home with their children that relate to what's happening at Centre Parks at that particular time of the year. Now, that campaign reaches around about 15 million people a year. It generated 380 separate blog posts last year, and that was only paying for 10 review trips. So it was a very cost-effective option for Centre Parks. Also, we've done things like competitions where we've challenged bloggers to write about their favourite holiday memory and given away a holiday as a prize. And again, that generated 150 pieces of coverage. So it doesn't always mean that you've got to pay for lots of expensive holidays. There are some really creative ways to engage with bloggers and talk about activities and destinations beyond doing press trips. But certainly my experience is that when doing press trips, looking for something that tailors into a niche, that tailors into something that bloggers are already doing, and crucially gives them an experience, gives you that really high quality content at the end of the day. How was that, Oliver?
That was good. It was worth waiting for. Okay, so our next speaker is, I can never do this, is it Niamh?
Yeah.
Hey, he's practicing. It's
this
Niamh
on?
Shields
Oh,
from
yeah, it's on.
Eat Like a Girl.
Hello, my name is Niamh Shields, as Oliver just explained. I'm a food blogger, but I'm a food blogger who's always on the road, so I'm a travel blogger as well. But I travel to look for food, to find cheese, to find cooks, to find chefs, to eat in people's houses. They don't even realise that's going to happen till I get there, and then I persuade them that they should bring me to their house and cook me Sunday lunch so I can write about it. So my interest is food in culture, and whether that's in a hotel or in a family home or in a market, I'm always trying to bring things home in my suitcase that I quite shouldn't be really bringing home. But nothing dangerous. I was saying just ginger flowers or whatever. But so that's what I do, and I do it full time now. I started in 2007, so I was one of the early ones out of the blocks in the UK. I was the first of a handful of food bloggers in London. When I started, I had a full-time job, so my travel options were limited because I had to work. But within my first month of blogging, I put up a gone fishing sign telling everyone, telling all 5 readers that I was now going on holiday. And then I was there and I was like, actually, I want to write about this. So I took the gone fishing sign down, and that was my first real piece of travel content. I was in Andalusia in Spain. And so that's really where it all started. After 3 years, I got an opportunity to write a cookbook, my first cookbook. And so I got an advance, which allowed me to leave my job. At that point, I had cut down to 3 days a week. So I was starting to travel a lot more at that point anyway. And then I left my job to write the book, and I just never went back. And so now I travel at least 50% of the year, probably a bit more. I'd like to keep it at around 50% because I do love London, and right now I pay rent in London, but I don't really live here. So, of all the cities you can choose to pay rent in, I've certainly picked a pretty special one. So I like to keep it at 50%. I always say, like I do really silly big announcements, I'm not traveling for 3 months, there's a travel ban, and after 2 weeks I'm bored and I'm like, no, I need to travel again, I'm going to travel now. So now I understand that I'm very happy on the road, and so I keep going on the road, and I call myself a bit of a recipe vampire. I like to gather people's recipes and bring them home. So I was in Malaysia recently and I shared a really lovely turmeric chicken curry recipe, which people went a bit crazy for, and I think people do like to see food in a travel context, and there are a lot of food obsessives out there. In the UK, it's a huge growth market. So I do a lot of stuff with travel bloggers as well. So I am really a travel blogger too. I'm part of a blogging collective called iAmbassador. We're going to Sabah next week. I travel an awful lot with them. I love doing that because it really opens my world up. I see how these guys work. And we went to Melbourne last year, and 5 different bloggers with 5 completely different niches went. One looking at wildlife, one exploring history. I was doing food and wine, of course, and someone was doing gardens. And so we spent half the trip together and half the trip exploring independently. So when we came back together, it was quite exciting to share our stories. And, for me, I find that to be very exciting and very interesting. So then I do food, but not food. So increasingly I do other things. I was indoor skydiving on the deck of a ship on Saturday, which I never thought I'd do in my life, but actually I loved it. And I was immediately Googling, how can I do this in London? I'm as surprised as all of you are. But, that was amazing. So a quick word on food tourism, it's huge. It's a growing industry. But people who are into food, we're all kind of horribly geeky, and we want to eat in very specific places. We don't just want to go to the okay place, we want to go to the best place. And we don't really care what it looks like, but it has to be the best food. And we get really annoyed if it's not the best food. We're kind of horrible people sometimes. So people like to follow what I do because they really trust my recommendations. And I am very strict at my recommendations. I will not put anything up on the blog unless I think, actually, you should get on a train or a plane or whatever it is to go to this restaurant because it's awesome. And everything there costs only £3 or £300 or whatever it is. But, you should go to this restaurant. So I like to say that I cover from the street to the stars, because I do. I'm as happy on a street corner as in a Michelin star restaurant. Once the food has heart and soul and it's cooked by somebody who loves what they're doing and I have totally taken away by the experience, then I'm very, very happy with that. So in terms of the blog itself, so it's been going for nearly 8 years, and I love it. It's totally unexpected. When I started, there was no engagement with PR or anything like that. We just, I think it was 3 years before I ever heard from anyone, and then it was like, oh, okay, that's interesting, let's talk about that. And so now it's a business. But, when I started, that didn't really exist, or it didn't happen, whereas now, it happens very early. And I'm actually quite grateful for that, because it allowed me to really establish myself and my blog based around what I love to do, because it takes about a year to establish a blog, I think. But since then, I've been awarded the Observer Food Monthly Food Blog of the Year in 2011, top 10 food blogs in the world by the Times, and this year in the top 500 most influential people in the UK in Deborah's. I was in the food section, not the skydiving section, but I'm now working on my second book. I love what I do, and I'll continue to do it for as long as I can, and travel as much as I can, and invade people's kitchens and try and bring home ginger flowers. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Niamh. And so now just some final words from Mark, who's also as comfortable in a restaurant or a street corner, and he's from Best Dad I Can Be.
Cheers, Oliver. Thanks. I'm going to stand up because I want to see the people at the back. Hello at the back. This is actually the first time I've ever spoken to people that were in a different postcode. This is really quite exciting. They're so far away. And I just feel hugely embarrassed because my blog post this week is about bacon sandwiches. And let's just have a show of hands. Let's nail this. Who likes brown sauce on bacon sandwiches? Okay, well, there's a special corner of hell waiting for you. Who thinks that supermarket bread is okay with a bacon sandwich? Yep, Beelzebub will have you. Don't worry about that. It's tomatoes and proper bread, okay? And bacon from the butcher, yeah? Are we all agreed on bacon from the butcher? What the hell is that white crap that comes out of supermarket bacon? It does it not? I live in Scarborough. We have this scum washes up on the beach. It looks exactly like the stuff that comes out of supermarket bacon. The two must be related. Right, get serious, talk about blogging. Quite a few people have talked about stats. Okay, how many people know the stats about their readership of their blog? Yeah? Have you done that? There's quite a few free programs which you can use to do that, and it's really, really useful. Like my readership is... Here we go. My readership for Best Dad is 85% of my readers are women. Okay, they're married or they're in a stable relationship. Generally speaking, they are aged 35 to 45. Their children are typically 5 to 10. My children are significantly older. My youngest son is now 16. So the purpose of my blog, in a lot of ways, is to tell them what's coming. Okay, you're going to have a teenage daughter. Now is a good time to leave for Buenos Aires and come back when she's about 20. Okay, we went through a horrible year of slamming doors. It was just awful, but I love her to death. And any of you that were in Nantes would have seen her there, and she started to write her own travel blog, and I'm really proud of that. So you do go through you come out the other side, and it's lovely. But those are the stats. Those are the stats about my blog. And if you're pitching your blog to somebody else, that's a really, really useful thing to do, to have your stats and to know what your readership is. You can get into a lot of detail. There's one word that appears in the Twitter profile of 33% of my Twitter followers. Does anybody like to guess what that word is? Sorry? Mum? No, pathetic. Pull yourself together. Okay? The word is wine. Okay? 33% of my Twitter followers have the word wine in their profile. If you add another word to it, it takes it up to 42.8%. What is that other word? Gin. Correct. Gin is the word. The most animated discussion I've ever had on Twitter was about Blue Sapphire versus Gordon's. Sorry, Bombay Sapphire versus Gordon's. Okay, so it's traditional on a thing like this to say, if anybody would like a copy of my slides. Okay, that's the only slide that I've got. But if you're that sad that you feel your life's not complete without a copy of that slide, email me. Okay, it's my right. Okay, so it's mark@bestdadicanbe.com if you want a copy of the slide or you want the notes or anything. As well as writing Best Dad, I also ghostwrite blogs for 3 different businesses, and that's probably what I want to talk about today. I've written Best Dad as a newspaper column and as a blog for 12 years now, without ever missing a week. That, as a parent, that I'm fantastically proud of that, and I think the parents in the audience will know that one of the things you do as a blogger who has children is that you leave your children an absolutely unique and just fantastic record of their childhood. That really is quite an important thing for me now. But I've written that for 12 years. The longest running business blog that I write, I've written for 4.5 years. So I do know a lot about producing a lot of content and producing it consistently. And if I pick out one word that I think is important to make a blog a long-term success, it would be that word, consistency. I think it's consistency of content, consistency of quality, and consistency of delivery. I think you've got to give your readers what they want, and you've got to give it to them when they expect to receive it. So that they come to get a blog, and it gives them what they're expecting to receive, and it's published at the same time every week or every fortnight. I really think, if you're looking at it from a business perspective, I think that is very, very important. Okay, as I said at TBU in Nantes, there's a lot of similarities between blogs and newspapers. It is called the Sunday Times. It is not called the When I Can Be Bothered to Write It Times. Yeah? Another point which I think is important is, this was a point that came out at TBU in Rotterdam, that a lot of bloggers are not really giving their audience what they want. You see this with a lot of bloggers. You see it with a lot of businesses as well. That they write what they want to write. They don't write what the readers want to read, and there is a big difference between the two. That difference is big. It's significant, and essentially it's where your business is as well. Big difference between what you want to write and what somebody else wants to read. The last point I want to make is one that I think everybody here would endorse. I've read a few articles recently saying that the day of the blogger is over, that blogs are no longer relevant, they're no longer important, they're no longer interesting. I'm not a person who's given to swearing or speaking forcefully, but I will say that's absolute nonsense, just absolute nonsense. In my view, I am constantly astonished at the number of businesses who have simply no idea what a blog could do for them, or what working with the right blogger or the right group of bloggers could do for them. Far from the age of blogging being finished, I actually think that from a business perspective, blogging has barely even scratched the surface of what it can achieve. What I do think is over, though, is the age of mediocrity in blogging. The internet and the ever-increasing demand for content has actually given everybody that writes an absolutely fantastic opportunity. But the internet and modern technology, the Kindle and things like that, means that anybody can publish a blog and anybody can write a book these days. And very sadly, anybody has done. There is a tide of mediocrity out there which you have to rise above. Good enough isn't good enough anymore. You do need to be outstanding. But if you can do that and you can deliver consistently what people want when they want it, then there's absolutely a world out there just waiting for you. So good luck with that, and thank you.
broke it. I think I have broken it. That's for me money back, never mind. So thank you for that varied set of thoughts there, Mark. My personal opinion, brown sauce, otherwise it's not a fried sandwich, and gin from Spain. But anyway, that's a conversation for later on tonight. Are you? Yeah. I think you've got two contributors right here.
Really? All the microphones have gone. I know. And now we've started talking about...